Hello friends, KillerBee here. In March of 2025, Mrs. KillerBee and I were in Colorado and decided to make a trip to Pueblo. Anecdotally, we had heard that Pueblo was kind of a pit. We were pleasantly pleased to discover this was not so. There is a large downtown area that retains the charm of earlier years. The former Pueblo Union Depot is on one edge of this district, the Union Avenue Historic Commercial District, with the Riverwalk on the other end. Next to the depot is a display of railroad equipment, which one can wander around at will. No fencing, no admission, so we did. And here's what we saw. The Pueblo Railway Museum calls their outdoor display area the train yard. Although it looks like a motley collection of equipment, the backstories behind some of them are quite interesting, such as Department of Transportation Locomotive Number 001, a model U-30C built by General Electric in 1971. It was used at the Department of Transportation's High-Speed Ground Test Center, located northeast of Pueblo. It helped with the checking of the initial loop when built, then in 1973 helped in one of the first test programs there. SOAC for State of the Art Car. The objective was to demonstrate the current state of rail rapid transit vehicle technology then. Power to operate the test vehicle during the tests was supplied by the DOT 001 and two auxiliary diesel generators through a third rail system before a connection from the commercial electric power grid could be established. This passenger car was reportedly built by Bud in 1946 as a 56-seat coach for the Florida East Coast and carried the name of O'Galley. It was sold to Seaboard Airline, became Seaboard Coastline, then went to Amtrak. It was placed in storage in 1983 and retired in 1988. The next car was built by Pullman Standard as a 6 double-bedroom cafe lounge car, delivered in 1955 to the New Haven Railroad as the Bay State. This end has had several windows plated over and otherwise modified. The other end is the lounge end of the car. It had a larger than normal buffet kitchen because it was intended to serve light meals to Pullman passengers on trains without a diner. It went to Penn Central, then Amtrak. Last on track, a 7-compartment, 8-seat buffet lounge, open platform observation car built in 1954 by Pullman Standard for Canadian National as the Bedford. It then went to VIA. According to the internet, Colorado and Wyoming Car 100 contains a locomotive engineer training simulator. It had previously been a caboose, home built by the Colorado and Wyoming in 1953 from an ore car. This is a reefer car built for the Santa Fe in 1923 to handle perishables. It would have been cooled with ice and was heavily insulated. It obviously ended its years being a buffer car for welded rail trains, that is, was most likely located between the locomotive and welded rail to protect the locomotives in case the rail shifted. The evolution of reefers is shown by the next car, also for hauling perishables, but built in 1958, so it has a mechanical refrigeration unit. Western Fruit Express was formed by the Great Northern and Fruit Growers Express. Northern Pacific was never part of it, which makes sense as it appears the NP Herald was applied over the BN Herald, making the timeline wrong. GN 2649, a Great Northern storage mail and express car, built by the GN in 1952 for passenger train service. Storage mail was mail that was pre-sorted and handled in a sealed car in passenger train service. It was not opened or sorted en route. You can see it has different trucks under it. Colorado and Wyoming 93 is a basic boxcar that apparently had been reassigned to maintenance of way service. That is, handling company material around the railroad and no longer used commercially. Railroads used to operate work trains for track and signal and bridge gangs. Some work sites were in remote areas where commercial lodging and restaurants were sparse. The work gangs would be housed on the trains parked on the siding, sleeping in dormitory cars, also called bunk cars, and eating in the meal cars with food prepared by cooks. One car is stenciled as a kitchen car and the other as a dining car. Appearances can be deceiving. This looks like an Amtrak car that then went to Canada for via rail service, but apparently is not so. It is a Budd 56-seat coach built for the Pennsylvania Railroad in 1946, then went to Penn Central, then to Amtrak. It was sold to Denver Railcar in 1983. The car was sold to a private owner in the early 2000s and moved to Pueblo. The Via paint scheme reportedly is from a film appearance, possibly as car number 180. A Rio Grande extended vision caboose built by International Car in 1976. It is called extended vision because the cupola extends over the side, allowing the trainmen riding in it to see down the side of the train. TSSX recorder car G20 was built in 1945 by American Car and Foundry as a U.S. Army hospital car, number 89406, one of 100. It was used to transport homeward bound wounded soldiers from seaports along the coast to hospitals throughout the country. The TSSX mark is for cars belonging to the United States Department of Energy, Albuquerque Operations Office. It is stenciled. It is equipped with an impact recorder. Just making a guess, but presumably the car was involved with the rail movement of radioactive waste to the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant east of Carlsbad, New Mexico. This Amtrak 54-seat coach was built by Budd in 1946 for the Atlantic Coast Line. It became Seaboard Coast Line, was sold to Amtrak in 1971, and retired in 1981. It was sold to Denver Railcar and eventually ended up at the Pueblo Railway Museum. American Steel Foundries, now Amstead, manufactures railroad car components. Online information on the car under ASF ownership is pretty non-existent, but it is an instrument car, so presumably it was used in trains to measure the performance of rail cars equipped with their components, or used at the test center. It was originally a Chicago and Eastern Illinois baggage coach, rebuilt into a dorm, lunch counter, lounge car. Sitting on temporary trucks is a 522 sleeper, that is, 5 bedrooms, 2 compartments, and 2 drawing rooms. Built in 1956 by Pullman Standard for the Seaboard Airline. It became Seaboard Coast Line, then Amtrak. The car was sold to the Heart of Dixie National Railway Historical Society chapter around 1981, and later resold to a private owner, then sold again to its present owner. Sitting beyond is a dining car. It was built by Pullman Standard in 1957 as a shell and finished in the Atlantic Coastline shops as the Naples. It went to Seaboard Coastline, then Amtrak. It found its way to the Indiana Transportation Museum, where it was displayed from the 1970s to 2018. It was then sold to a private owner in 2022 and moved to Pueblo. Steam locomotive Santa Fe 2912 was built in January of 1944 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works and has a 484 wheel arrangement. It never used coal, it used fuel oil all its life. It was removed from service in 1954 after running over 900,000 miles. In 1959, the locomotive was donated to the city of Pueblo. Pueblo Union Depot is modeled on 11th century Romanesque architecture. It was completed in 1890. The exterior is native Manitou red sandstone. The last passenger train used it in 1971. Today, the building is privately owned and houses offices, luxury apartments, and hosts special events like weddings and receptions. The main hall, which was once the waiting room for railroad patrons, now serves as an elaborate banquet hall that seats up to 500 people. Across the street is the restored freight house, which was constructed in 1924. It is the home of the Pueblo Heritage Museum, which has some railroad history displayed. And as a bonus, the active rail line through the city hosting the BNSF and Union Pacific is behind Union Station. 2 blocks northeast of the train yard is the museum's restoration shop area, which also houses some equipment, albeit behind fencing. This 44-ton switcher was built in 1947 by General Electric for Colorado Fuel and Iron. This car was built by Pullman Standard in 1942 as a 442 sleeper, that is, 4 double bedrooms, 4 compartments, and 2 drawing rooms. It was named Imperial Robe and sold to Union Pacific in 1945. It was retired in 1970 and transferred to the Maintenance of Way Fleet in 1972 as a bunk car. Eventually it was sold to a private owner and moved to the museum. The cluster of 4 cabooses belonged to the Rio Grande, Santa Fe, Missouri Pacific, and Colorado and Wyoming, all Pueblo Heritage Railroads. The Colorado and Wyoming sold 3 of their GP7 locomotives, built in 1951, to the museum in 2003. 2 are in the background. The Colorado and Wyoming Railway was a subsidiary company of the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, who operated a large steel mill in Pueblo. The railroad still exists to switch the mill, which is now called Rocky Mountain Steel Mill. The little red guy is a snowblower from the Manitou and Pikes Peak operation. The even littler yellow guy is, well, I don't know. Now, the real oddballs. Also housed on site are these. But first some background, which will be significantly condensed. The U.S. Department of Transportation opened the High Speed Ground Test Center northeast of Pueblo in 1971. Its original purpose was to perform state-of-the-art high-speed rail research and development. By 1972, the focus had narrowed to the study of magnetic and air-cushioned levitated vehicles. 3 promising vehicles with linear induction motor propulsion were selected to test. However, after several years, funding and interest ran out. In 1975, the test center reorganized, changed their mission statement, and changed their name to the Transportation Technology Center, the TTC. The 3 vehicles were abandoned at the test center and eventually made their way to the museum. In the rear is Grumman Aerospace Corporation's contribution. It started as a hover train, intended to run inside of a concrete U-shaped track on a cushion of compressed air. The intent all along was to add a reaction rail on the bottom of the guideway to test the LIM propulsion, but the money ran out as this phase was being constructed. The Roar Aerotrain was an experimental tracked air cushion vehicle, TACV, straddling a reaction rail, supported on a thin cushion of air, and propelled forward by its linear induction motor. Hiding is the Garrett air research vehicle with wheels to run on standard railroad tracks, with a reaction rail protruding up from the middle of the track. So this museum is kind of a sleeper. Quite a bit of cool stuff with interesting history. And even some non-railroad stuff in the area caught my eye, such as this old-school electrical substation. Uh-oh, starting down a rabbit hole. Time to refocus. It is easy to watch the current day trains and there is a path that goes right along the yard and the Arkansas River. So I hope you enjoyed this tour. Well worth the visit if you are near Pueblo. You can subscribe here or link to another video. Thank you. Bye for now.